Every night, Tom and his daughter Kira have always eaten dinner on the porch, while the rest of the family ate inside. They didn't hate family dinners, it was just something they did. It was their way of bonding, they called it. Even now, at the end of all things, with the rest of their family dead inside, their tradition hasn't changed. Tom is sipping a bottle of beer as he looks up to the sky. It's cloudy tonight. Kira doesn't drink, well, at least not tonight. Usually she would love nothing more than to pop one off with her father and party till the night ended. But something in her wouldn't let her take one. Something in her stops her from reaching over it, forces her back into her bubble. She's staring at the ground, eyes heavy from thousands of sleepless nights. Tom, like usual, doesn't think too much about what's happening right in front of him. He keeps drinking. Helps him feel better, he says. Even when Sam was alive, she couldn't stop him from grabbing a bottle of beer after work each day. Tom was a perpetual drunk, but he never shouted, never lost his demeanor. He just drank. He told Sam once that whenever he drank, he ascended to another level of consciousness. Of course, Sam was always bewildered by this statement. But drinking made him think. Made him think long and hard about things that weren't necessarily his problem. Tonight was no exception. His head kept filling with thoughts as he kept filling his body with beer. On her side of the porch, Kira's breathing starts to quicken. Breathe, breathe, breathe. The voice of the therapist in that tiny white room creeps into her head. Breathe, breathe, breathe. She breathes quicker, her heart starting to match the pace. Memories of that room. Breathe, breathe, breathe. In the past, she could have calmed herself down, but not tonight. Tom scoffed to himself, taking another swig of his beer. Slow it down, girl. You're gonna get yourself a heart attack. Kira didn't look up. She didn't react at all. He was always bold and tad disconnected from the world whenever he was drinking. She never minded the boldness. In fact, she was one of the only people who could spend hours listening to Tom speak when he was drunk, when the wildest thoughts would pop into his head. But she couldn't hear them from where she was. Those thoughts bounced off the border of her bubble. She remembered her brothers, how they would play each day. She remembered her sisters playing with dolls inside. She remembered her boyfriend Chase from the big city, who tried to teach Tom how to use a computer once. Chase, her brothers, the tiny room, the room with the therapist. Breathe, breathe, breathe. You're gonna waste the air, Tom chipped, taking another sip of his beer. Last time I checked, air's good for you. Air won't matter if we're dead, Kira whispered underneath her breath. It won't matter. Sure, something's gotta breathe. What about us? Tom shrugged. Kira kept trying to control her breath. She kept trying to push the memory away. That horrible night. The TV went black. And it shone an eerie blue through the living room. Tons of blue lights danced off the screen. Tom was shouting. Sam was holding her kids. Some of them were screaming, some of them were crying, some of them were praying. Kira just sat there, staring at that screen. It reminded her of that tiny room. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Ah, Tom said. It's cloudy tonight. Can't see no stars. Huh? Yeah? We're going to die tonight, aren't we? Maybe, Tom said, taking another swig of his beer. Better start getting things right with the man upstairs, eh? Kira looked up at her father. We're going to die tonight, aren't we? The tone with which she repeated herself was the same Salmon used when confronting Tom about his drinking problem. All those years. Tom shrugged again. We're going to die? Again, a shrug. Dad! Tom turned to his daughter, setting the bottle of beer down by the leg of his chair. Dad. Her voice started to quiver. Breathe. 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 Tom looked up at the sky, taking in that dull brightness one last time. Kira started to shake. Yep, we're gonna die. Kira retreated back to her bubble. Her heart was banging against her rib cage. Her lungs swelled as air rushed in and rushed out. Her brain began to bob around the borders of her mind. Her heart sank deeper with the weight of it all. Breathe. Breathe. Not rain tonight, I'll observe. Kira couldn't believe it. How? Cloudy skies, there's a weird smell in the air. Papa. Tom immediately straightened and turned his chair towards Kira. She never called him Papa. Not once in the last 17 years. Maybe when she was a kid, she had called him Papa all the time. But since then, she grew up and decided that she didn't need his help anymore. Not since that day, she ran off into the wheat fields by herself for the first time. Girl, he said, I'm here. What do you need? Papa, I'm going to die. Hey, come here. They embraced. The hug was not warm. It was not loving. It was not hopeful. It was just empty. An attempt for something meaningful. Both Tom and Kira felt it, but neither of them could get the courage to let go. What could a hug do? What could an act of love do when all things came to an end? Tom felt the hug. He tried to believe he felt it, but he knew it wasn't working. He knew he couldn't help her. He let go and sat back in his chair, holding the beer bottle in his hand, but unable to take another drink. Kira felt her head racing as she wondered what it would be like. Would it be like sleeping? Would it be running off, far into the distance, never found by anyone you loved or cared about ever again? How? How are you so calm? I don't know, Tom replied matter-of-factly. To be honest, he hadn't fully processed what was happening. It was the drinks, yes, but he also didn't think anything like this would happen, especially not to him, especially not to his family, especially not now. He didn't think that God would let this happen. But here he was, alone with his daughter sitting outside a house filled with the corpses of people he once called family. Don't know what God's thinking up there, he muttered to himself. tear came down her cheek. I don't believe in God anymore. Tom paused. It doesn't make any sense to me. Kira's breathing got faster. Some thug up there makes people only to have them suffer, only to kill them. And then he doesn't care if they have dreams. He doesn't care if they want something more. What's the point? Maybe it's just meaningless. Once we die, we're given nothing else. Valm sat with this in lone thought. To her credit, he wasn't sure if he still believed either. He was always a faithful Christian. Grew up in a Bible-believing home, and he never doubted that there was someone up there watching him. It was easy to doubt when the world was on fire. Thunder, or at least what sounded like it, roared in the distance. Tom closed his eyes and tried to pray to a creator who had been there his entire life, but now, save her, Lord, save us. Let us come to heaven, Lord. He felt the words in his mind. They were faithless, echoes of a religion he once held dear. It doesn't make any sense, Tom thought, as he noticed Kira was crying to herself. She's not even 30. She should have the rest of her life ahead of her. Why? Breathe. Breathe. Tom tried praying again, but no luck. He took another swig of his beer. His mind started to race through the possibilities. It wasn't very scientific, but he could feel the thoughts in his mind start to entertain something he hadn't thought before. He could hear the concept of comfort, feel the rhythm of a slight hope. I don't know much, really, Tom began. You and your mother and that city boy and even some of your siblings always knew so much about that. I remember one night you came home from school and you were crying, you were whining, you were saying that some giant lizard or some giant Rex was going to come out of the shadows and eat you any second. I told you, just don't worry about that. Get to normal living, and if one does come, Pop's got a gun. He didn't like that answer, your mother didn't like that answer, and she spent the rest of the evening talking to you, teaching you about these things. How about that? Didn't make you so scared of it, did you? But you always loved the big lizards. Ever since that night, you just couldn't stop talking about them. It's like you still believed it was going to come out and eat you. No, good at making you feel better. I'm just an old country boy trying to figure out this thing called life. And there was a giant asteroid that killed those big lizards, right? Kira nodded. Breathe. Breathe. Well, there was some giant explosion, right? Yeah. Breathe. Breathe. I remember a few years ago, it was actually back when you were a kid, we took a family trip to the Tetons. It wasn't much, just a basic camping trip with the money we could put together back then. And honestly, you kids hated every second of it. Gotta blame myself a little for that. I remember one time we were hiking through those mountains, going to this overlook, and everyone was complaining the whole time, even your mother, even me to a little bit of extent. Why were we spending so much time, so much effort just going to this place no one wanted to go? When we finally got to that overlook, we finally got to the top, I remember seeing you look out to the horizon. There was sunset out there. Beautiful orange sky. It was magnificent. Everyone else was ready to go home, pack it up, and just come back to the farm. But you didn't want to leave. You could have spent your whole life there, gazing at that sunset, couldn't you? Kira's breathing slowed slightly. She wiped a tear from her eye. Do you remember? Kira could remember as a kid, her hands on the railing, her father by her side, and a sky full of wonders, of fire, of parties, of celebrations, of stories, of clouds, rays shining brightly. She could forget everything about the world at that point. But she was too young to think about that kind of stuff. I remember. He chuckled. Took us forever to hike back down. And the whole time, you kept talking to me saying, can we go back to the overlook? I want to go see the sunset again. He turned to his daughter, a warm smile on his face. From the gray clouds behind them, one single ray of orange light peeked out and rained down on the clouds. It was a pretty sky, Pa. He nodded. It was, wasn't it? There were big explosions. There were a lot of sighs. That explosion came from the big lizards. But maybe that was the last thing they saw. Right when the world was falling apart, they saw a sunset. Some kind of artwork filled with the stories that they used to tell, they used to share all the time. The universe gave them one final memory before sending them into that night. A sign, I believe. I told them that maybe it all was for something after all. Everything they ever made, everything they ever did, everything they ever talked about. Maybe it wasn't for nothing. Maybe the universe really did know they were here on this tiny speck of dust. It knows we're here. Fear wiped the tears from her eyes. She calmed her breathing. As Tom spoke, more rays of light pierced through the gray clouds, washing the farmland with warmth. You had a lot of dreams growing up, Tom said. You wanted to be a doctor, right? Kira shook her head. Paleontologist. Bless you, Tom chuckled. Interestingly, Kira chuckled back, a faint smile on her lips. And you're saying you never got the chance, and now you never will. She frowned. But if the universe sends us a sunset right before the world is blown to bits, take that as a sign, Kira, that you were here. You got to be real. You got to feel it all, to experience what it was like living on dust. Maybe it wasn't for nothing. Maybe there was meaning to it all anyway. Tom and Kira got to their feet. By this point, the sky had erupted into warm, vibrant colors. And maybe he's trying to tell you something, Tom said. A tear welled in his eyes. Maybe the universe is trying to tell them lizards and all of us one thing. 3 words, but the most powerful words you'll ever hear. He took her by the hands. I love you, Kira. They ran into each other's arms and hugged each other brightly as the lights in the sky behind them raced through the sunset, through the bronze and golden sky. Tom could feel his little girl's heartbeat. Kira could feel the love run from his arms. They were all they had left, but at this point, they were all they needed. They were just alone with the universe, taking it all in one final time. Tom and Kira have always eaten on the porch. Even now, when humanity entered its final act, the end finally came. When civilization finally collapsed. They went out doing what they always loved. Drinking beers, sharing laughs, and forgetting about tomorrow.